In this video tutorial, we're going to talk about how to print from Paperspace. And to do that, we're going to demonstrate how to import a title block border into Paperspace, how to create a viewport that allows you to see through your paper into model space, how to access and set up the page setup manager so that you can print from Paperspace. And we'll also demonstrate how to scale in Paperspace. So, to get started, let's go down to the Layout tab number 1. AutoCAD usually defaults to 2 layout tabs. Excuse me. And AutoCAD comes with a pre-set up viewport. We're going to delete that viewport. The next thing we'll do is we'll type in insert. The insert command will allow us to gain access to the TBAL-MS title block. There it is. So we'll click on it. Now, because of hard clip limits, which is the mechanical limitations of the machine, the printer has to pull a piece of paper through, and because it needs to pull it through, it has to grip it on the sides. So there's a certain amount of paper, space all around the outside of the paper that cannot be printed on. And though we won't talk about it right here, you can access your printer properties and see what the hard clip limits are, but we'll look at that later. So I know based on my printer and the title block I'm using, I have to insert my title block border at 0.015 on the X and 0.015 on the Y. Everything else stays unchecked. And so there it is. It inserts. Now, I didn't explode it. I didn't have it checked to explode, so it stays as one unit. And I kind of want that for now, because if something goes wrong, I want to be able to access it all easily without having to go around and click on every individual entity. So we have inserted our TBAL-MS title block border. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create our viewport. So I'm going to make the viewports layer active. Then I'm going to type the mview command. The mview command allows us to create viewports. We're going to create a polygonal viewport. In AutoCAD, you can create docked viewports and you can create floating viewports. Docked viewports are typically square viewports. They all touch, all the edges of the viewports touch each other. They can be arranged in different sizes, all the same size or different sizes. Or you can create undocked, which are typically non-rectangular shapes. I mean, they can be rectangular, but you can have a triangle, a circle, a cloud, whatever, to show different aspects of a drawing. Those are undocked. So to make this happen, to create our polygonal, the reason we're going to create a polygonal is because it's going to be an unusual shape. So I'm going to click on that. It asks me to specify first point. I'll click right here. Ask me second point. I'll click right here. Third point, fourth point, fifth point, sixth point. Now, seventh point, it seems like I'd go down and click here, but you don't. You go C, enter, and that gives you a closed polygon. Now, we now have a hole in our paper. Now, you might go, oh, what do you mean paper? That's black. Well, AutoCAD defaults to white. If we type in options, we're going to open the options dialog box. We're going to go to colors. We're going to make sure sheet and layout are selected. Uniform background is selected. And we're going to select white. And this is how AutoCAD comes. Just like that. And the outside would be white too. But if all of this were white, well, you look at that all day, you're going to go blind. So most people turn it all black. So we'll go back to options. I didn't spell it correctly, but it's still open. Colors, sheet layout, uniform background, and instead of white, we're going to go back to black. I'll apply, hit OK. So now that sheet of paper is black, only because it's easier on the eyes. Looking at something that's bright white all day is not easy on your eyes. So this is our sheet of paper right here, where you see that dash line. That's our sheet of paper. And we have our title block border sitting on top of the paper. And then with our viewport, we have cut a hole, an imaginary hole through our electronic sheet of paper. Is there really a hole? Well, yes, in AutoCAD there is, but you know, it doesn't look like it. We're going to go back to model space for a second so we can create some geometry so we can see what we're looking at or see how that hole in the paper actually looks. So there's a circle. Let me create a rectangle. And there we go. I'll go back to my layout tab. I'm going to double click inside the layout tab. So now what I've done is I have, we'll say, activated that viewport. So notice how the outside edge is now bold. If I double click outside of it, see how it's not bold? It's bold. When it's bold, that means I have access to model space. Notice the model space is showing down here. If I double click outside, it went back to paper. We're now back in Paperspace. Okay, so there's my objects. Now, when you print from model space, you have to set the printer up to show the scale. And I can show you what I'm talking about. If I go to my plot print icon, right here is where you set the scale. So if this drawing had a scale of 1 to 48, we put a 1 there, we put 48 there. And then it scales the drawing for you as you print it. But when we're printing from Paperspace, we don't do that. There's a number of ways we can set our scale. If I go down to here, I can set my scale to 1 to 1 right there. And it moves it to 1 to 1. I can then lock it so you can no longer change that scale. It just moves the paper away from you. I can also, let me zoom out of there. I unlocked it so I can zoom back out. I'm going to go zoom, enter, and then I'll go S for scale, enter, and I'm going to go 1 /1 XP for scaling in Paperspace, and it scales it for me. Same thing. If you look over here, there it is. And then I can lock it. So those are the two different ways you can scale inside of your viewport. Now, to prove to you that I'm in Paperspace, now I'm in model space, and the two are different, I'll do a couple things here. I'm going to go back to model space, and I'm going to go from a top view to a southwest isometric. So there it is. I go back to my layout. I'm going to regen, and I forgot you got to change here. It's my mistake. Oh, I forgot. This is a good thing. Forgot to unlock it. Okay. Now we'll go back. Southwest. So notice how my drawing view has changed, but my title block border hasn't gone to southwest because it's laying on the sheet of paper. So that's just to demonstrate. Here we're working in model space. Outside of the paper, or outside of the viewport, we are working in Paperspace. Now, we don't really ever draw in Paperspace. We want to do all of our work right here. All of our work to our drawing is right there. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't things we create in Paperspace, because there are. And every company is going to be slightly different. This is just a simple mechanical title block border. We have our red box up here. We have all the information about the drawing down here. And typically things like that go on in Paperspace. But every company is going to be different in a lot of how they insert and where they insert things, whether they insert it in model space or whether they insert it in Paperspace. So that is how we create the title block border in Paperspace, how we create the viewport, how we scale it, how we access back and forth between Paperspace and model space, and just a general idea of what goes in model space, what goes in Paperspace. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to show you how to set up your layout tab so that when you print things from your layout tab, it's set permanently, unless you change it, but it's set permanently so you can with confidence print without previewing. So I'm going to right click on the layout tab. Well, actually, before I do that, correction, I'm going to rename my layout tab to TBAL-MS. So I know what's going on in that layout tab. That's my title block, A size, landscape, model space. But I'm gonna change that. I'm going to rename that to Paperspace, PS. Okay, so that is my title block border, A-size sheet of paper. It's in the landscape orientation, and it's Paperspace. So now I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to go to Page Setup Manager. And in the Page Setup Manager, it'll show you all your layout tabs that are set up and ready to go. Of course, we've only set one up, so only one is showing, our TBAL-PS. So I'm going to go to Modify, and when you open this up, it says Page Setup Manager TBAL- or underscore PS. And that's true, but it's the same thing as your print plot dialog box. So, based on what printer you have access to, you need to select your printer. Here's my paper size. You want to leave it to Layout, because that's what we're working on. We're working on our Layout tab. We're going to leave these at 0. We're not going to check center plot. We're not going to check fit to paper. And because our drawing is 1-to-1, we leave that as 1-to-1. We never change that in printing when printing from AutoSpace, because remember, all the scaling is done right here in this area right there. We actually scale inside the viewport, and we leave this as 1-to-1. And then if you are, printing with a black and white printer, change it to monochrome, leave everything else as is, and we're going to preview it to make sure everything's correct. And there it is. Now, in theory, unless you come in and change something, you have permanently set that layout tab up to print without ever having to preview. It's going to print the same way every time. So we'll click OK. It's not going to print, but that's the setup. Takes it back to there. We'll close that out. So now that layout tab is set up to print the way it should for this drawing, and you'll never have to check that again. Then, of course, to actually print, we're going to go up here, and we're going to print it. So here's why that's important. Because when you're working in an architectural firm, or who knows where you're working, maybe in a company that makes a widget, who knows what, you want to do all your drafting during the day, and then when you're at home doing whatever you want to do, you want the printer and plotter to do the printing for you. You don't want to do that during the day because it's not as an effective use of your time. So you print it all when you're at home. And if you know all your layout tabs are set up correctly, you just hit print, and there's a way you can print multiple things in AutoCAD. And while you're at home, eating dinner, sleeping, whatever you're doing, going out to do whatever, AutoCAD is printing out everything for you. And you know it's printing correctly because you've set it all up, you've tested it, and it's ready to go. And then you could also have multiple tabs across the bottom. I've seen drawings that have 50 tabs across the bottom with all different shapes and size, layout, viewports. So that is printing from Paperspace. Of course, this is just the basics, so hopefully that helps you do it.